Hello there, Bodhidharma, the mysterious Indian prince behind Kung Fu and Zen. I'm assuming that this is about someone who started Kung Fu, who started Zen. I mean, it was fascinating to learn that like Buddhism originated in India, was like an offshoot, and then kind of just spread around. It's fascinating seeing just how much originates in India. Yeah, or at least an offshoot of India. But yeah, let's go into this.
Kung Fu and Zen Buddhism. Today, these are associated with China and the Far East. But did you know that it can be traced back to a legendary Indian monk? Meet Bodhidharma, first patriarch of Zen Buddhism and the initial force behind the development of Kung Fu. Let's travel back in time to 440 CE, to the Tamil Pallava kingdom. It was there, in the imperial capital of Kanchipuram, that Bodhidharma was born to King Simhavarman. Well liked and well respected, Bodhidharma was the youngest of 3 sons, and yet, despite his age, he was favored to take the throne. Knowing that their father preferred Bodhidharma, the 2 older princes.
That's the thing. It should be the wisest and the not so much the strongest, the wisest. Like, you would rather have a wise ruler than a strong ruler. You would rather have someone who can guide the people to prosperity than someone who will guide the people to war. Because someone who's strong will just assume the only way to achieve greatness is through conquest. A wise ruler knows the only way to achieve greatness is through the prosperity of their people. It's just one of those things I've always found, like, you want the wisest ruler you can have.
Tried to interfere. What began as public disparaging remarks escalated into outright hostility and eventually an assassination attempt. But Bodhidharma.
Yeah, I gotta say, when it comes to like brothers who go after each other for things like that, it's tough. I have 4 brothers. And I could never even imagine us all ever getting up in arms with each other. I think I've only ever gotten mad at one of my brothers. And that's it. Just one of my brothers. It's just like, here you get people. So, again, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's one of those things that once you get it or have the taste for it, you know that you want to be the one to achieve it. And it's like these 2 brothers are going after the one. Well, what do you think is going to happen after the one who is on lead for the throne is taken out? Well, you are the next on the chopping block.
Dharma narrowly survived. Violence, hatred, betrayal, all of this disenchanted Bodhidharma from a career in politics. He decided to renounce his royal claims, turn to Buddhism, and redirect his energy to spiritual matters. Armed with new purpose, Bodhidharma began to travel. He journeyed far to the north, to Magadha, where he received training in the Dharma from the famed Buddhist teacher Prajnathara. Fun fact, many scholars believe that Prajnathara was a woman. There's substantial evidence for this claim, as well as for the existence of prominent female teachers at the time. Bodhidharma learned much from his venerable master, but just before Prajnathara's death, she made a suggestion. He should travel to China to proselytize the faith. Yes, China. Though Bodhidharma was encouraged to take the maritime route, as Hunnic violence made the overland route too unstable. Coincidentally, the maritime route required that Bodhidharma depart from the port city of Mahabalipuram, located in his family's core territory. Despite the chaos of his former princely life, Bodhidharma returned home with cautious optimism. See, it was Bodhidharma's kindly nephew, not one of his nasty, scheming brothers, who was seated upon the Pallava throne.
Oh.
This newly minted king regretted how Bodhidharma had been treated in the past and wished to make amends, and so he requested that Bodhidharma stay and accept his patronage and protection. But Bodhidharma...
Wait a minute, you can't just say that his brothers tried to take him out and it was like, well, they didn't end up getting the throne. Well, so I'm going to assume that it was the king who realized what they had done, who realized that it was his other sons had done it, so he denied them both the throne since the one he wanted stepped down. I think that's what happened.
Politely refused. He was determined to continue along the path towards China. That being said, the young king still wanted to provide assistance, and so he sent word to the Liaosong emperor in China, requesting that Bodhidharma be welcomed to his country as an honored guest. It's important to note that Bodhidharma wasn't doing something outlandish in traveling to China. The Pallavas were a well-connected mercantile kingdom with significant political, cultural, and religious influences abroad. They traded goods as far west as the Mediterranean and as far east as Fiji and Japan. And generally, Indian mercenaries, diplomats, merchants, and monks traveled widely. The reverse was true also.
This is the thing I don't get. It's like India was a powerhouse, a massive powerhouse, the world's over. How did it go? Well, I guess you have the mindset of like the West, where it was like anyone who doesn't speak the language, anyone of a different color, anyone of this is inferior. And they saw the prosperity, and because I know India had a ton of, and then Britain came in and basically took control.
There was a significant foreign presence throughout coastal India. For example, in the Tamil harbor town of Nagapattinam, archaeologists have discovered the remains of a Buddhist pagoda which was built for the Chinese community in the region. But let's rejoin our friend on his journey, shall we? In 472 CE, Bodhidharma set off from the port of Mahabalipuram. Bodhidharma made several stops in maritime Southeast Asia. The most important of these stops was the Kantoli kingdom of Sumatra, where he's believed to have stayed for up to 2 years. In this region, Bodhidharma would have been a part of the vibrant university scene and started intensive study of the Chinese language. Finally, around 475 CE, Bodhidharma made his way to southern China and arrived at the bustling port of Guangzhou. Even today, an ancient stone in the port marks his arrival. It bears the inscription, "Landing Place of the Visitor from the West." In China, Bodhidharma...
Okay, that's funny. The fact that I'm saying West is in like Europe and America, but if you think about it, at that point in time, there was no America. There was no North, South America. So it was the West was anything west of China for them.
Bodhidharma's work could finally begin. In 475 CE, China was divided into 2 dynasties, the Northern Wei and the Southern Liu Song. Buddhism had already spread successfully in the north. The region...
Dynasty Warriors taught me that much. Yeah, if you've ever played that game, I always had fun just slaughtering tons of people, you know, running around on a horse. This neither here nor there.
30,000 temples, and 5% of the population had served as Buddhist clergy. In the south, however, the Buddhist religion was mostly limited to the elite. It had not yet become popular among commoners. And so it was in the south that Bodhidharma began to preach, in busy metropolitan Guangzhou. During this time, Bodhidharma lived and worked at Shaolin Temple, but he also preached at the nearby Guangxi Temple. There is ample physical evidence attesting to Bodhidharma's presence. For example, while living at the Shaolin Temple, he ordered the construction of 5 wells, each featuring written inscriptions, and these are still preserved today. Furthermore, 3 gates in the temple
show a picture of it at least. Now I'm gonna have to do some research after this. Gosh dang it.
Compound bear the inscription, "Visitor from the West," and within the inner sanctum of the temple itself, followers of Bodhidharma installed a 75-foot high statue in his honor. But this peaceful life would not last forever. In 490 CE, after nearly 15 years spent in Guangzhou, a famous interaction occurred between Bodhidharma and Emperor Wu of the new Qi dynasty. See, the emperor wanted to know about the merits he would receive for building several Buddhist temples. In response, Bodhidharma explained the Zen-like doctrine of emptiness and told the emperor that he would receive no merit for building the temples. No. Furious, Emperor Wu ordered that Bodhidharma leave his site at once. Bodhidharma was no fool. His life as a prince taught him about the very real dangers of politics. If he stayed in the region, he knew he would face problems. And so Bodhidharma crossed the Yangtze River on a reed boat and made his way to Pingcheng, the capital of the Northern Wei.
It's sad how hardships happen like that. I mean, someone wants a reward for building you something, and then, I mean, I don't know. I have no words. Because here he went out of his way. The ruler went out of his way, built him the temples so he could teach the people, and then wanted something in return, and is told he's getting nothing for his efforts. Again, that kind of feels like a slap in the face to the emperor, or the ruler of the Qi dynasty, but at the same time, it's just like that was different cultures colliding. That's just what it's like. That's just what it's like.
In his initial years up north, Bodhidharma moved around quite a bit. When Emperor Cao Wen shifted the capital to Luoyang in 494 CE, Bodhidharma moved there along with other prominent monks. And 2 years later, when the emperor ordered the construction of the legendary Shaolin Monastery, Bodhidharma moved there too. Fun fact, Though historians almost exclusively associate the Shaolin monastery with Bodhidharma's legacy, the temple was actually built on behalf of a different Indian spiritual master, a monk named Batwa. Bodhidharma's time at the Shaolin monastery was controversial to say the least, for he was an unorthodox man who preached unorthodox methods. Consider, for example, his Zen-like technique known as wall gazing. Bodhidharma is said to have spent up to 9 years in meditation in Songshan Cave, facing a rock wall. This approach was seen as a coup for Buddhist thought in China, which was mainly scripture-based. Meditative Indian Buddhism hadn't yet caught on. Bodhidharma's meditation-focused approach attracted both admiration and hostility. He gained several allies, including 2 prominent Chinese disciples, Hui Ko and Dao Yu, but he gained many enemies too. Bodhidharma's teachings were perceived as inaccessible to common folk, and traditional Chinese Buddhists worried that it would slow the spread of the religion. Politically entrenched monks decided that Bodhidharma had to be stopped. According to one narrative proposed by the...
All right, now get to the martial arts. I mean, I find that fascinating because everyone has probably done it, where your eyes are kind of out of focus, your mind kind of goes dead, you're having nothing in there, and you just are stopped and you're staring at something, and you can start to see like the little crevices in the wall or the little details, or it starts to look as if the shadows are moving on their own. I mean, there's like this weird period in between where your mind is kind of off. You kind of detach yourself from reality and you're like looking dead on, and you can like feel like you see something that isn't truly there. In my case, I'm always like, oh, it's just the fact that I probably have lack of sleep, or it's my mind playing tricks on me, things like that. But we all have had that moment where you're just staring and then it feels like the world slows down. I used to have that all the time when I was younger, and now it happens sporadically where I have that feeling where it feels like my body's going like I'm moving in molasses, like very slow, but my brain's processing like 100 beats per minute or something like that. I'm going so much faster in my mind than I can physically move. I always find that feeling like very, yeah, there's something like Zen, I guess would be the word that I feel when I feel that. It's uncomfortable, but at the same time, it feels like that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. But yeah, I like the fact that he's like talking about just staring at the wall, because I can relate to that. I have done that. I've been in that moment where you can like feel like there's something there.
The writer of Transmission of the Lamp,
even that
Bodhidharma was fatally
is.
Poisoned by a jealous rival in 528 CE. Another narrative, put forth by the writer Dao Xuan, claims that Bodhidharma died on the banks of the Lo River, which was a popular spot for executions. Dao Xuan talks extensively about the hostility towards Bodhidharma's teachings, and so it has been theorized that Bodhidharma was executed for his beliefs during the Late Wei Rebellion.
What about martial arts?
But yet another interesting narrative, this time a supernatural folktale, surrounds Bodhidharma's death. According to medieval writings, a Chinese official bumped into Bodhidharma while traveling abroad in Central Asia. Bodhidharma was carrying his favorite weapon, a South Indian long staff, and there was one sandal hanging from the tip. In his conversation with the official, Bodhidharma explained that he was returning to his beloved homeland, India. As for the single sandal, he said that the official would soon understand. Perplexed by the conversation, the official made the journey to the Shaolin temple, only to discover that Bodhidharma had passed away 3 years prior. Curiosity drove the monks to open his tomb, but they found no body and no buried items except for a single sandal. Since then, Bodhidharma has often been depicted carrying a staff with one sandal hanging from the tip. The prevailing view in both Chinese and Indian society is that Bodhidharma is the illustrious founder of Shaolin Kung Fu. Is such a claim tenable? Perhaps, but it's complicated. Based on extensive narrative evidence describing Bodhidharma, his favorite weapon was the six-span staff, which is similar in form and function to the Silambam fighting staff and the Ketukari fighting staff, both originating from South India. Interesting. Let's hop back over to India then. For thousands of years, many different martial arts traditions found a home in the Indian subcontinent. These traditions varied from region to region. Military accounts of the Gupta Empire identify over 130 different weapons worth mastering. And in the Lotus Sutra, there's reference to a boxing art. Even the Kama Sutra contains martial references, suggesting that women, not just men, should practice with sword, spear, quarterstaff, and bow and arrow. People often assume that martial training in India was exclusive to the Kshatriya caste. This is simply incorrect from a historical perspective. caste was not a prohibitive factor for receiving high-quality training. For example, we know that throughout Indian history, well-trained peasants who had served in war campaigns formed prominent martial clans. And in the 8th century text Kuvale Mala, it describes martial arts being taught at Salad and Ghataka educational institutions. At these institutions, Brahmin students from all over the subcontinent learned and practiced many combat styles. Unfortunately, British colonial policy led to the destruction of most native Indian martial arts.
Oh,
in both North and
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. That's one thing I always hated about like Conquest. You destroy the history of everything that came prior. When you do that, it becomes harder to learn the past. And if you can't learn from the past, you just repeat the past over and well, nowadays it's the issue of, especially here in, well, now I say the West, in the West, where people, well, we have the past to learn from. We just choose not to because it's more beneficial to complain than to see the past as a guide to learn from. It's easier to take life easy than to realize that there are, well, I say take like it's easy to play the card of like you're discriminated against rather than looking at the past and realizing how much better we are, how much better as a people we are, how much we have changed. Sure, not everyone has, but in the West, we refuse to look at history, and in some cases even acknowledge the truth about history.
In South India, only a scattered few martial traditions remain. Let's turn our focus to South India, specifically Tamil country, the place of Bodhidharma's origin. There are 4 martial arts traditions in South India that scholars believe could have influenced Bodhidharma. Kalariyapattu is an ancient weapons-based tradition that is often referred to as the mother of martial arts, with written evidence of its existence dating back to 200 BCE, and indirect evidence supporting a much older lineage. Kalariyapattu is perhaps most famous for its exotic weapons.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand those weapons, those swords, you know, the aluminum sword. I don't think it's aluminum, but like the steel whip swords. How do you use that? Because it can only bend one way and the blade is on the other end. I mean, of course, a professional who knows how to use it would easily be able to behead me with it. But at the same time, it looks funky. Someone pulls out their saber and it flops to the side. I mean, the symbolism there speaks for itself. I got a floppy sword. Sorry. I guess that says more about me than anything. I would never be able to learn how to do one and use one. It just seems far too complex. Because let's face it, a simple steel longsword would be so much easier to handle than one that flops about on you.
Including a multi-bladed sword whip.
I'm more simple.
Silambam is another weapons-based tradition, but special focus is given to the staff. Tamil Sangam literature dating all the way back to the 2nd century make reference to the sale of Silambam staves, swords, and armor to foreign merchants. Varmam is a unique martial tradition with a focus on pressure point attacks and medicinal treatments, both very relevant to Shaolin Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Varma Adi is an unarmed tradition that was very popular in the Pallava dynasty. It was a practical martial art with few prohibitions. It encouraged grappling, disarming opponents, kicking, kneeing, elbowing, and head blows.
It's like boxing,
As a prince
Tai
of the Pallava
Chi,
dynasty,
Muay Thai.
Bodhidharma would have been subject to extensive martial training and would have been proficient with various South Indian martial arts. But did Bodhidharma transmit any of this knowledge to the monks at the Shaolin Temple? Many scholars seem to believe that he did, at least in some capacity. During his time at the Shaolin Temple, Bodhidharma is believed to have taught the monks a series of martial practices long associated with the various South Indian traditions: breathing exercises, stretches, attacks, defenses, and even medicinal treatments. Bodhidharma's decision to teach Indian martial arts to Chinese monks might have stemmed from the need to improve their blood circulation. After all, his meditative innovations encouraged long hours of stillness. Martial training would have also been useful against highway robbers and other criminals, who were a constant headache for the monks. Bodhidharma wrote down his martial teachings in a manual called Yijin Jing, and these texts were said to have evolved into Shaolin Kung Fu. Fascinating, right? But it's important to remember that Bodhidharma, though an important contributor, was not the sole creator of Shaolin Kung Fu. More accurately, he was one of several influences that developed into the Shaolin martial arts tradition. Let's make one thing clear. Bodhidharma is not the founder of Zen Buddhism.
Oh, no, of course not. Zen has been around for a long time. He was just teaching it and finding another method, because it seems like they had their own teachings of Zen, and his was staring at a wall, which
The meditative practices of Zen Buddhism, otherwise known as Chan, had already been gaining traction in India for many years before. That being said, Bodhidharma did develop and propagate his own unique approach to Zen. It was this form of Zen that Bodhidharma brought to China. So what did Bodhidharma do exactly? It's fair to say that he introduced and popularized Zen practice in China and the Far East. In fact, he was so successful that in the decades after Bodhidharma's death, Zen Buddhism became the mainstream form of Chinese Buddhism. It even came to be known as Damozang, or the Bodhidharma school. Although he may not be the original creator of Zen Buddhism, he is arguably its most important figure. Bodhidharma's teachings didn't remain isolated in China. Eventually, his unique strain of Buddhism traveled to Korea and then Japan, where it had a significant impact on their respective cultures. Bodhidharma's impact was so significant, in fact, that the Japanese developed new narratives to more closely link him to their country. For example, while Chinese legends trace his death to poisoning in 528 CE, Japanese legends follow through by claiming that his soul was later reincarnated in Nara as a wise beggar who lived at the foot of Mount Katoka, located in Oji Prefecture. In fact, of the 8 temples in Japan dedicated to Bodhidharma, the most important one is located in Oji Prefecture. And because of Bodhidharma's contributions to martial arts in East Asia, he was respected and favored by the samurai. And so if you visit the gardens of his dedicated temple in Oji Prefecture, you'll find the graves of many important samurai. In Japan, Bodhidharma's cultural role was expanded and changed over time. He came to be known as Dharma, and enjoyed popularity as a birthing deity, a protector of children, and a bringer of good luck, especially during a severe smallpox epidemic in the Edo period. It is during this time that Dharma dolls became an auspicious gift for children. Fun fact, the visual representation of Dharma dolls is based on the legend of Bodhidharma's 9-year meditation in Songshan Cave. In the legend, his arms and legs fell off due to the lack of use. Then, to avoid sleeping, he cut off his eyelids. The red color of the original doll comes from the association of red with measles and smallpox during the Edo period. Even today, Dharma dolls are given as gifts during major festivals and events, including Japanese.
You know, that thing becomes creepy as soon as you explain its origin. Oh my gosh, he was like, oh, that's cute. There's something else that's like, oh, he's got no arms and legs. They fell off. Oh, he removed his own eyelids. It's like, oh, now it's a creepy doll.
These elections. And the eyes are meant to be painted in by the recipient as part of a wish-making ritual. So there you have it. Bodhidharma was truly a larger-than-life figure, even if some of the bolder claims about him may have been exaggerated. And now you know.
Yeah. So, I gotta say, it seems like you have to take it with a pinch of salt, like the martial arts. I'm pretty sure that there was something there. The fact that he walked around with basically what amounts to a bow staff. I'm pretty sure he did know how to defend himself, and it makes sense that if his, well, how he meditated was sitting down, staring at a wall, well, you have to maintain your body somehow. And if he's trying to introduce that, it probably was his disciples that took his side that really took on his teachings and spread it everywhere, because he would have to teach them something in order to maintain their bodies. Because, well, if you're not walking, if you're not moving, if you're doing absolutely nothing, your body will start to atrophy. So he would have to train them something, which was high intensity, which could protect them in some cases, get their heart rate. Like, a lot of it is like knowing how to breathe properly helps your heart rate out, or helps your heart out a lot, an absolute lot. So I could actually see that now that I've sat with it, because I was thinking maybe not, but you think about it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Because if he's teaching people to sit for hours on end to stare at something, imagine how stiff you'd be to move. Now, if you train your body prior to that, you do martial arts beforehand, stretches, things like that, and then you do it, and then you stretch after, you do martial arts before. So whatever order it was in, he would have to train them something. So they would breathe properly while they're sitting for hours on end. Days on end in some cases. So yeah, I'd still take it with like a pinch of salt, but you can see the possibility as to why that is said. You could easily be like, oh, I can see that. You can. It's like literally there for you. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I'm really enjoying these. I'm really enjoying these informative videos. Oh my gosh, I'm stumbling over my words. Thank you all for watching. It is fascinating seeing how many things actually did like originate in India, and they just spread like they just poof, everywhere, and people nowadays don't even know where things come from. I mean, I'm sure some people will say no kung fu, there's probably a video establishing on who exactly started it and why but yeah, they probably took a hint from something, but that's not to say that he himself didn't teach something to his own pupils. Though there probably is some hint to it, and then someone took something and ran with it and did more with it. But yeah, it's always fascinating to learn just how small the world is and how everything is influenced by everything else. Like the new age thing that people do is yoga, when yoga's been around for eons at this point. I think eons is a time, right? It's a time. I don't know. I'm saying it because it sounds cool. Thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Doodles.